Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is now 7:57 a.m. and you are listening to Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. And today is Tuesday, and we've got some good news for you guys, some great stuff to talk about. And we've also got a great interview for you guys today. We will be having Mr. Michael Rayford on to talk about financial empowerment and many other things. So before we get into that, of course, we're going to let you guys know what's happening and what is going to be happening and what's up and coming. So the city of Aurora, as we mentioned yesterday, has had a lot of good milestones over 2020. So there was a lot of good highlights about the things that the city has done, all the cool stuff that the city has been into. Some of that stuff has included 48 ribbon cuttings last year. So Aurora is definitely open for business. Now the COVID restrictions came in, as you guys know. So that was an overall total. But despite the COVID restrictions, there are many who feel that the city is doing things safely, moving forward with a lot of good progress, has a bright future, lots of good things on the horizon. And we are concerned about the pandemic and our residents and neighbors, of course. But we do have our eyes on the future and what could be coming up and positive. So those 48 grand openings represented business owners and teams throughout the city, with spanning across 8 general industries. So shout outs to Aurora, City of Aurora, Invest Aurora, City Council, Quad County African American Chamber of Commerce, Regional Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Aurora Downtown, Marissa and all that. Shouts for everyone. All right. The Aurora Public Library has a lot of good initiatives coming up. We told you guys about that just yesterday. Well, we told you about it. Actually, we started telling you about this over the weekend. If you are woke, you should be awake right now. Let's take a sip of our collective coffee if you're awake. Yes. Perk it up, baby. All right. So Wednesday, January 13th at 6 p.m., there will be the citizenship and recent updates on immigration. Legal service representative from World Relief Chicagoland will be there. Registration is required. Wednesday, January 20th at 6 p.m., contacting your elected officials. This is a follow-up to MLK Day of Service. Former political staffer Lily Rocha will cover your best practices to reach your local, state, and federal representatives. Registration is required. Thursday, January 21st, 7 p.m., Civic Education Series, County Boards. Learn all about county boards, and this will be in conjunction with the League of Women Voters for the Aurora area. Registration is required, and this is going to be for adults and teens. February and March initiatives highlight culture. Friday, February 12th. Friday, February 12th at 10 a.m. Tai Chi for the Chinese New Year. The ancient practice of Tai Chi will be a program available to adults. It's an effective exercise to improve fitness and health. Registration is required for that. Tuesday, February 16th, 7 p.m. Growing your business with LGBTQ friendly practices. Now that's part of the Fairness and Equality for a Better Aurora series in conjunction with the Aurora Human Relations Commission. Registration is required for that. Thursday, the 18th of March at 6 p.m. Civic Education Township Government. Continuing that partnership with the League of Women Voters for the Aurora area, the series is focusing on township government and its role in policy making. And speaking of that, as we've been beating into your brains and hopefully it has saturated your cranial cavity, township government, the elections are coming up April next year. Primaries are in February, so just next month. Get to know who the candidates are, get to learn what Aurora Township does, get to learn about it and learn if you live in township. Township government in America is, I believe, the oldest form of government. It certainly is in Aurora, and Aurora Township dates back to 1850. Any fact checkers out there, y'all can double check that for your boy. But yeah, 1850 is what Aurora Township goes back to. Now, other news. So 2021, unfortunately, has a potential for a lot of programs helping people to stay in their homes expiring. As we know, on a national level, the eviction moratoriums were set to expire. They had been extended per the president signing that piece into law again and avoiding a shutdown and other things. But there's a great article that we posted that features our friends of the Neighbor Project with all their programs designed to help keep people in their homes. So King County agencies preparing for a potential wave of evictions in 2021 is the article that we shared with you guys. So check that out. It's a great article by the Tribune. And also, we wanted to highlight that the state of Illinois, the Illinois State Police and J.B. Pritzker. How did I almost forget that guy's name? State Police and J.B. Pritzker have expunged 492,000 records of cannabis, non-felony related cannabis arrest records, and pardoned 9,210 low-level marijuana convictions. That is a boon to at least the lofty notions on paper on the rightness and correctness of the criminal justice system. There's so many people languishing who have languished in jails for low-level marijuana offenses. So this rights that wrong. You can read that article. It's also from the Tribune. We shared that as well. It's really good. Shouts go out to everybody in 2021. We hope that you guys all have a blessed, safe, positive year. Let's all continue on all the good that we experienced last year, and let's just double down on that and take that into the new year. Shouts go out to Meaningful Letters, wonderful local company. They do engravings and designs and pens, and we are proud to present and have their anti-racist pen that we got just yesterday. Number 9 of a limited edition of 45. So, shout out to Meaningful Letters, great small business here in Aurora. Shout out to many different small businesses. Two Brothers, what up? Gillerson, Shouts, Indiro, Treadwell, All Spoked Up, Wickwood House, The Whole Downer Place, Prairie Grass Selections. Even if you're not in Aurora, we'll give you a couple shout outs right now. Batavia Holy Cross Church, shout outs. Hearth and Hammer, Batavia, shout outs. Endless Possibilities Auto, I think they're in Naperville, shout out. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the guys who did the Turkey Reina Drive, shout outs. Big shout outs. Shout outs to everybody doing something positive in Aurora. All right. So, we hope that you guys have a great day today, and let's get into this interview. And that is the news.
We have a couple things in common.
We do. Bald heads.
Absolutely.
For the listeners, tell us who you are and where you're from.
My name is Michael Rayford. From Aurora. Have been here all my life except for a while in college. Born and raised on the west side, so Black Hawk till I die. If you were raised on the other side of the river, I apologize. We know west is best. So I will ride that till the day I die.
I'm glad that we have a Black Hawk on the show because this show has previously been dominated by Tomcats.
Yeah.
It just happens like that.
But you have to practice on somebody.
Yeah.
And then when you feel you got it right, then you bring on the Blackhawks.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Do it right. Do it real big. So, born and raised on the west side.
Yes.
Hometowner. From your early days to now, what's some significant increases that you've seen take place in Aurora?
That's a great question. I think when if anybody were to look back at where Aurora used to be, I'm talking early 1900s, mid 1900s, this was a booming town. From what I could tell, if you look at any photographs, like if you went to City Hall or downtown, it was a very vibrant town.
Right.
And even when I was in high school, it was a vibrant town. But we always compared it to, of course, Naperville.
Right.
And other surrounding cities who were much more developed than we were. I think that, you know, Aurora, if you walk around, you'll see that, and for those who know the history, there has been some downturn and you know, the want and need for development. I think now you're starting to see those things happen in fruition. I remember when I was in college, when I went to Waubonsee Community College, and our sociology professor would talk to us about the development of Aurora over the years. And this is when you could drive from the west side of Aurora to Waubonsee and there was nothing but cornfields. Now,
cornfields about a lot about the town.
Now you see major development, and it just takes time.
Right.
And I think downtown is now at that turning point where you see things starting to really take place.
In the time that I've been here in Aurora, I've seen huge changes. The outlet mall coming about, River Edge Park coming about, now the bridge that's being built. Aurora seems to have been chugging along with a good spirit, even despite the pandemic. Would you say that's true?
I would say that's true, absolutely. And I think that we just have to be patient.
Right.
Because I don't think anybody was prepared for what happened in March.
Right.
Nobody could have seen it or could have predicted it. So I think we've taken it in stride. And I think that will even help people who make those type of decisions even look even further into some other things that need to happen down here. I think when we talk about a digital world,
right,
you know, this city really needs to catch up. And I know that there are some people in place who are trying to make those type of things happen. But the pandemic has kind of forced us to really open our eyes to what potentially life could look like in the near future.
Right.
Yeah.
We made good strides with the 605 Innovative District, for example.
Absolutely.
Up and coming, was doing good things, and then, like you said, here comes the pandemic.
Right.
But I think now we can see the benefit that could be with the 605 and everything because of the pandemic. Like, it could really help.
I mean, I think
in the future,
the need for the digital world is here.
right?
And I think that the pandemic really showed people that if you don't have some way to conduct business from a digital platform, your business is going to be in trouble.
Right.
And so I think that some of the businesses that have been born in downtown to help companies go and be more digital and have that digital presence, I mean, we're ahead of the curve, if you will. Like,
Right.
if your business was, you know, using Zoom or using, you know, Microsoft Teams or any of those type of digital platforms, you're ahead of the game.
Right.
Or if you know, if you were a restaurant owner, if you weren't using any type of, like if you were stuck in the 50s model,
Yeah.
you may have had to shut down.
Just scanning and pushing the button.
Right. But now you see those restaurants that are surviving have completely shifted the way they do business, and they're booming right now because they were prepared for, but also had the ability to pivot and continue business as normal.
Tell us your educational background.
Okay, so I graduated from West Aurora, got my associates at Waubonsee Community College. I went to Aurora University for a year,
Yeah.
but went there for the wrong reason, went there to play football. And so in that, education was not my priority. My priority turned out to be more of the social life and playing football. So from an academic standpoint, got kicked out, which probably was the best thing for me because it forced me to focus on academics. Transferred to Eastern Illinois University, where I got my bachelor's and my master's. And after getting my bachelor's, you know, just having that reality of, man, it wasn't that bad. I got my bachelor's, but do I really want to now go and work and get a job and have a 9 to 5? And I decided I wasn't ready to do that. So applied to grad school, got my master's, and lo and behold, ended up in education. So I'm an adjunct professor. Have been teaching at Waubonsee for 17 years. I taught at COD for 3 years. work for a nonprofit. So education and giving back and helping the community is something that I've been doing for the last 20 years or so. And that's really my foundation. Really my foundation.
When you say you the life of a worker bee, we'll say, wasn't enticing to you after graduating, I get the sense that it wasn't because you shunned hard work. It was simply because you knew that there were things that you wanted to do probably beyond what was just offered. Is that a fair statement?
The best way I can put that is, and this is a problem that we deal with today as financial educators and campaigners. When I got my bachelor's, I did not know what I wanted to do. You know, when I think back, I knew I wanted to be on television, but never knew how to get there. Like I did acting in college, I did some stand-up, I hosted at a comedy club, so I knew I wanted to be on stage and in front of the camera,
right,
but had no idea how to get there. And it wasn't until my junior year, I took a speech class at Wabansie, and the instructor asked me, had I ever considered communications as a major. So it wasn't until I was 19 years old that an adult said to me, have you thought about what you want to do as a career? Right. And actually identify some skills and talents that I had. So I think if we can help young people identify those things while they're in junior high school and early on in high school, you know, they won't have to make those kind of decisions. In college, like, what do I do now? I have no idea what I want to do. So it was really just trying to figure out what I wanted to do and how do I get there. I mean, I knew communications was a thing, but now how do I make money in communication?
Right.
That was the key, because I can get a job. I mean, anybody can get a job. But,
right. But
what do you want to do for a considerable amount of time? Help people earn great income, and not get stuck in the rat race of a 9-to-5, having a boss, being an employee for the rest of your life, doing something that you really don't like.
Clocking in, clocking out.
Clocking in, clocking out. And, you know, I think the pandemic really created an opportunity for people to become entrepreneurs. And so there are a lot of people who are stuck in that rat race, who don't like what they do, who don't enjoy who they work for, who don't get paid what they're worth. And the pandemic created an opportunity where if you have an idea, why not give it a shot?
Right.
Especially if it's something digital.
Right.
Yeah.
Growing up, what impact did your mom have in your life?
My mom was the biggest impact. My parents moved here from Mississippi, and this was more towards industrial, where they wanted to come where the work was, and so
right.
They had friends and family who had moved here previously,
right.
So they knew they could come here and get a job. I saw my mom, I want to say she had 3 jobs all of her life while I was growing up. So she was part of the workforce where you get a job at a good company, you work there for 30 years, you get a pension. That's what I saw my mom do. And I saw my mom at time work 2 jobs because she wanted to earn more money. And I guess she wanted to be a good example. And so all my life when I've worked, I've always had 2 jobs, 3 jobs. If I needed more money, I would go get another job. So never been afraid to work because that's what I was around.
Right.
And so my mom was a major influence. So even though she was just a high school graduate, and she was the one who told me my senior year of high school, she pulled me to the side. And this was the first conversation that my parents ever had with me about college, was the fact that we can't afford to send you to a 4-year school, but we can help you with a community college. And so that was the first conversation, my spring semester of my senior year. So I ended up going to Wabansie because I applied to some different schools. However, didn't know anything about application deadlines, applying for FAFSA, how to fill out a college application, knew none of that. High school, I can't say the resources were not there, but I don't remember those meetings.
Right.
I don't remember sitting down with my guidance counselor and getting that assistance.
It kind of goes back to the point that you just made. You knew you wanted to be in communications, but what are the steps to get there?
Absolutely.
Apply for what? Sign up for what? What's the class? How many credit out? And then what? Exactly.
And even more importantly is, you know, how do I establish those relationships with those professionals who are already doing what I want to do, and how do I get them to become my mentor?
Right.
And so that's a major thing that I think, I mean, I know I was missing, but I think a lot of young kids today also need that as well. And there are some great organizations around here who provide that, but then there's still a lot of young people who need that type of leadership, mentorship, those relationships as well.
So you've got your bachelor's, you have your master's.
Yep.
What's Michael Rayford doing now?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
I remember, and I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, the very first job I got was at a company called Zaxxon, which was telemarketing. And it was only because, okay, I'm home now, because again, I didn't do any internships, so I had none of those relationships to fall back on to help me get to where I wanted to go. So I started looking through the newspaper, and a real close friend of mine worked there. And he's like, you know, you can get hired tomorrow. But again, it was clocking in on the phone, and I don't remember what we were selling, but it was like $8 an hour on the phone all day.
Right.
And that was just one of those indications like, I cannot do this. And so one day looking through the newspaper, the Beacon News as a matter of fact, there was a classified ad that said, have you ever thought about becoming a TV producer? And I was like, yes! So I went down to ACTV, got certified, and started producing my own show called Word for Word, and did that for 7 years. While doing that, I got a job, and I had done various sales jobs at the same time. So I started working for the Beacon News, doing advertising sales. So I worked there for a little while. And lo and behold, I ran into a high school friend at the Roundhouse. And we started talking about, you know, hey, what are you doing? And it turned out she was working for the Oprah Winfrey Show.
So, real quick, plant the flag for the conversation for the listeners. The Roundhouse, formerly Walter Payton, this was Walter Payton's Roundhouse.
Correct.
Which is now Two Brothers.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we started talking, and it turned out she worked for the Oprah Winfrey Show. And she said, I can get you in if you give me a resume. And so I took that 7 years of producing experience from ACTV, put together a demo reel, got it to her, got me in the door as a production assistant for the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Nice.
But that was not...
Clocking in, clocking out again?
It was clocking in, clocking out, but think about this. So for 7 years, I was producing and hosting my own show.
Right.
And I wanted to do what Oprah was doing. So I wanted her spot.
Right.
So it wasn't going to be much longer for me to be there because I wanted her spot. And I actually remember one day in the studio when the show was over and I went and sat in her chair and it was like, oh yeah, this is it. And so at that time, African American men only really had 2 positions on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And it was either you worked in security or you were one of her stylists, so doing her makeup and hair. Because, I mean, I had people come up to me all the time, like, how did you get it? Because everybody wanted to be in production. So, like, how did you get into production? How did you, there are no black men in production. I think I was one of maybe 3. And so I was a production assistant, so I was at the bottom, and there was a producer and an executive producer who were African American. And so one day, and this is a lesson I learned about television, is that somebody always wants your spot. Like I want an Oprah spot. Do you remember Batman when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the villain and George Clooney was Batman?
Arnold played Mr. Freeze.
Yes. They were on the show one day. And so here I am. I had, one of my responsibilities was the green room. So whenever we had ordinary people on, I just made sure they had water, they were comfortable and whatnot. So I had no idea that they were going to be on the show. So I walk in the green room, and who do I see? I see George Clooney, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think his name is Chris Donaldson, who was Robin.
Chris O'Donnell.
Chris, yes. Yeah. And so who walks up to me and introduces themselves to me but George Clooney?
I mean, right.
He said, hi, how you doing? I'm George.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Nice to meet you. And then so someone saw us talking, and someone pulled me to the side and said, you know, when there's celebrities on the show, you just get out of the way, you don't talk to them. Okay, fine, I had no idea. And so I found myself a little corner, became a ghost on the wall. And so you know on Oprah's show, that turnabout when she walks out?
Yeah.
I was standing right there. So guess who they bring out next to me to get ready to come on the show?
George Clooney?
George Clooney. And so he starts asking me where I'm from, and of course I said Aurora. And he's like, yeah, I've been to the boat, I've lost some money. Just basic conversation and banter. And one of the producers saw that and went to the executive producer and said I was bothering a celebrity. And so about a week after that, I was asked to leave. And so that was the awakening to me to let me know that, you know, in television, it's cutthroat. You're not guaranteed anything. You know, being the new man on the production crew, you know, because people in the past have come on the show or worked there, they've asked Oprah for money and just, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. But that wasn't, you know, that wasn't my ammo. But then I learned, like, okay, I have to be ready to continue doing my own thing. And then from there, did some volunteering. Then ended up working for PBS in Chicago, and did that for a while.
Shouts out to PBS.
Yeah. Emmy nominated, worked on 3 different shows, did some documentaries. After a while, formed a partnership with 2 women in Chicago, and we did a show called Mo in the Midday, and attempted pitching that a couple times. But you know, with pitching shows, you know, we had a crew working for us, but eventually, you know, the crew needs to get paid. And so we had just exhausted all of our resources with volunteers and whatnot. So we decided to go our own way, and, you know, they're doing great things, and, you know, I found what I want to do, and I'm trying to help move this campaign along and do my thing.
Were there any similarities between Harpo Studios and PBS?
Well, budget for one. From a work standpoint, I was an associate producer, so I had the ability to find my own guests, help create the show. Where with Oprah, it was more of and guinea pig is the wrong word, but as a production assistant, you know, you have several people who are above you, and you basically do what they tell you to do. So regardless of how creative you may be, you have to earn your stripes. You got to put in work first, if you will.
Right.
But with PBS, it was more education based. But being able to come up with show ideas and just having to pitch it to the executive producer was awesome because I had access. Where with Oprah, you don't have access unless you're a producer or an executive producer. So that's just one of the things. But you could be really creative, but you have to wait your turn per se, and creating shows, if you will.
Now at this time, your PBS days, what's taking place in Aurora around this time? What's Aurora like?
You know, the social scene was really nice because, of course, you had the Roundhouse, which is now Two Brothers. You had a couple of restaurants downtown. The casino was probably at its high. I was doing a lot of back and forth from here in Chicago. And I remember Club New was really a really popular place at that time as well. And Aurora was mentioned a lot on the radio because of Club New and also because of the Roundhouse and Walter Payton. So, you know, from a business standpoint and a social standpoint, Aurora was looking really nice. It was kind of the place to be because there were things to do, you know. So from a business aspect and a social aspect, you know, on a Friday, Saturday night, you can go somewhere and have dinner.
Right.
You could go to the Paramount and see a show. Like all those things that we look forward to, but we're not able to do during the pandemic, those things were available in downtown Aurora. So it was, you know, and some, if you ask, some were like, this is like Little Chicago, if you will.
Yeah.
Because we had those particular elements for entertainment and business that you could take advantage of.
Now, before we get into the financial literacy business and aspect of our conversation, I do want to kind of capture a sense from you. As an African American, would you say your time on those production sets, whether it be Harpo or PBS, just the nature of it, would you say that you found it easy to get your message across? You're working for, I understand that you're working for people and you're doing what essentially they tell you to do. You're there to work.
Right.
But is it true that the industry stifles ideas and thoughts and voices, and one is not able to. I mean, you told us the George Clooney story. But I think that's a work hazard, as opposed to, you hear people say that the industry does not let you get the message and tell it. Is that true?
From my experience, well, I think there's a lot of preconceived notions that would hinder someone from getting the message across. So with Oprah, I would say probably, and you can't quote me on this number, but let's just say 80% of the employees there were females. So, as an African American man, it's, none of us ever want to seem like the angry black man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's always that stigma of, if we have a disagreement, oh, he's the angry black guy.
Right.
Where PBS, on our staff, there was a mixture of African Americans, Hispanics, and Caucasians in the staff on all levels, and because it's smaller,
right,
we all knew each other quite well.
Gotcha.
So it was able to voice your opinion, have conflict or disagreements, or to collaborate, and those things happen on a faster. Like if we had a great creative idea, we could execute that idea much quicker.
Gotcha.
Than with Harpo, there are a lot of layers to go through to get something put in place.
Gotcha.
And on that level, it's very easy for someone to say that your work is their work.
Okay.
Or that it was their idea.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. So tell us about the work that you do now with financial literacy.
Okay. So I was working for the Quad County Urban League.
Shouts out.
Shouts out.
Yeah.
And had been there for 8 years, and so started teaching GED, and then from that was doing housing counseling. So for homeowners who wanted to purchase, I would do budget counseling with them, just preparing them for the homeownership process. So pre-purchase, post-purchase, foreclosure intervention. And so I was doing workforce development, and so I was doing workshops on teaching people how to write their resume, 30-second commercial, practicing interviewing. And one of my clients, we got to know each other quite well. And she said, my neighbor does this, and I think you need to meet them. And I met her neighbors, and they were and still are in the financial services industry. And she said that you need to meet them because, what you're teaching people here is very valuable, but what about the next level? And so I met them and got to learn about the financial literacy campaign, and this was in 2014. So joined the campaign. I got certified as there's a nonprofit on our platform called the Heartland Institute. So with them, I'm a certified college consultant. So we were talking about college before and students not being prepared, and how do I do college the right way, and how do I avoid student loan debt, and how do I choose the right school. So I'm certified in that, but then I'm also a licensed insurance professional, so I can, number one, educate people on the importance of insurance, but the bigger picture is financial literacy. So financial illiteracy is the number one economic problem in this world. 67% of the population can't answer 5 basic questions as relates to money.
Right.
So we teach people how money works. So we do that through workshops, one-on-one, master classes. I have 2 books, and I forgot to bring them, but one is called Saving Your Future, which is a very basic, it's 86 pages, and it really talks about the financial world where we are today, the 3 generations, if you will, baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. And so I talked about my mom being a baby boomer, and the fact that there are 10,000 people turning 65 a day right now. And so right now we're experiencing, or will be experiencing, the largest wealth transfer that this country has ever experienced because of all these baby boomers who are retiring, number one. But number two, for those who are passing away, they are leaving a legacy for their next generation. So all this money is moving. And so what do I do with it?
Saving Your Future is the name of that
yes,
book?
And then so there are a lot of financial concepts that this book goes over to educate. And then there's also another book called How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. But really, if you don't know how money works, at some point in time, somebody's going to take advantage of you, whether it's on purpose or not. And in that sense, you are a sucker because you didn't know. And usually, I mean, for the most part, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And so this financial campaign, we have financial centers all over the U.S. and in Canada, about 300. And so, you know, we do workshops 2 times a day, Monday through Friday. Every quarter we'll do some type of major type of event as well. We have our beginning of the year convention on January the 30th. And again, so I can post that link on Facebook for the listeners.
Sure.
We also, and this is really, we talk about the digital age. So when March happened, of course, everything shut down. So all of our financial centers shut down. And so our leadership was like, you know, what do we do? Do we stop, or do we find a way to continue and push forward? And so all of our workshops went digital. So we went on Zoom. And so within about a week and a half, all of our workshops were on Zoom. And so we started doing workshops on a daily basis on Zoom, which then, of course, the attendance went through the roof because people are locked at home, they can't go anywhere. And then, you know, some will say, well, if you're at home, you can't go to work, you should be working on some type of skill to improve yourself. And of course, financial literacy was one of those things. And then, so we typically do 2 conventions a year. And the second one is usually in May, June.
Okay.
So the question was, do we cancel it because we can't travel? And the first thought was yes. However, our leadership decided to put one together and we'll make it digital. So, for every person who registered, our leadership donated $2 per person who registered. So we raised $800,000. That money was all donated to different food banks around the country. Mm-hmm. We had about 125,000 people registered and then attended the event as well.
Very cool.
So it was like one of those things where if you weren't ready for the pandemic, how do you pivot?
Right.
We were able to pivot.
You gotta diversify your bonds.
Absolutely. So for any person or business, because something else is going to happen, we just don't know when.
Sure.
Will you be able to pivot? And I think the pandemic showed that most people financially were not ready for this.
Quick question. Is
Yes.
one born with the ability to pivot? Or does one have to acquire skills like that? Is that something you can learn in a book?
Well, if your parents were in a position, and we're just talking from a financial standpoint.
Sure.
Like if you already had the funds positioned, then you could pivot. But if you are 80% of the population who works paycheck to paycheck, you probably were not able to pivot unless you're in an industry where you could still work.
Gotcha.
Or if you had an additional source of income that was digital, you could pivot. So I think that the pandemic showed that, number one, you have to have your financial house in order. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about, number one, an emergency fund, because the pandemic is, what, 10 months?
Yes.
So did you have funds set aside to go 10 months to pay all your expenses if you could not work? So think about how many industries had to just shut down.
Right.
And you got to have a job. Now, do you, like, how long can you get unemployment?
Right.
You know what I mean? How many sources of income did you have? So if one stopped, you have another, like, I'm sure you've heard that the rule of thumb is 7 streams of income. Mm-hmm. Well, some would say 20, 25 is what you need.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it really, I think it was a rude awakening for a lot of people. And luckily enough, I mean, I'm still a W-2 employee. I still have a job, but I also campaign as well. And I'm working on transitioning. So if you think of, you've heard of Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yes.
You ever heard of the cash flow quadrant?
Yes, I have.
So employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. We all should be trying to move from employee to self-employed to business owner to investor.
Right.
If you're stuck in employee and self-employed, at some point you're going to be exposed. And so that's what we should be trying to do. And I think that's what financial literacy can help you, number one, you can figure out what your blind spots are. But number two, by getting educated, you can put a plan in place to move you through the quadrant to the investor. That's where you want to be. Yeah.
And the financial, what's the name of your company?
World System Builder.
World System Builder.
We also have a Facebook page, World System Builder Community.
All right.
So on Facebook, there's about 70,000 of us.
Okay.
And so these are just individuals like myself. They're individuals who have become clients. There are other people who, have gotten licensed, are now practicing professionals. There are those who are just joining the campaign to help spread the word of financial literacy as well.
What do you like most about what you do?
And I'll back up just a little bit. So when I first started teaching, I thought it was my job to help every kid in my class. And I would do everything that I could to help them. But I quickly learned that you can't help everybody. Because if you're not ready, you're not ready. Or, whatever it may be, you may not like me as your instructor. That's a possibility. But I've had those days where I've had a student where I had 10 years ago, we just ran into each other. It's like, taking those speeches in your class. Like, I didn't like you at first because you make me do all those speeches, but it truly helped me become a better communicator. Now it helped me get that job. That's what I like. So from the financial education standpoint, when I can do a presentation on our college coaching program and help a kid find grants and scholarships that they otherwise may not have gotten, or help them get into the right school, or when I've helped a client put together a financial strategy where no one had ever talked to them before about this financial education. And now, because of the education, they've been able to put multiple things in place that will help them and their family, and then they create a legacy as well. So when people come back to you and say, man, you know what, I appreciate what you did. I think that's why all of us do this campaigning, is because for the most part, no one has ever talked to us. The first time, my brother was the first person, because he's been in the insurance industry for a while. He was the first person that talked to me about insurance from outside of the workplace.
Right.
But even in the workplace, they don't educate you.
No.
They don't tell you the value. All you're doing is getting group insurance.
Right.
And it's something that they offer because they get the tax deduction, the tax write-off. But when we talk about, how do you use insurance to build wealth, protect your family, building a legacy, my brother was the first person. And I was probably 35 years old at the time. So all the jobs that I had, like Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, all these major financial corporations never called my parents' house.
Right.
Because they didn't make enough money.
Right.
That's 80% of the population. Like, if you don't have $250,000, those companies for the most part are not calling you. They deal with the high wealth network individuals. So our focus is to, talk to those individuals who work a 9 to 5, paycheck to paycheck, middle America, who've never been introduced to a true financial education.
And thus, as they say, knowledge does equal power.
Applied knowledge.
Applied knowledge.
Because I can teach you all the things that I know, but if you don't take action, it means nothing.
What does America mean to you?
It's funny you ask that, because when I left home, The Purge was on.
Oh, good movie.
One of my college roommates used to say that this is the best place to have it bad, because you can do, if you put in the work, you can do anything you want to do. So I think from that standpoint, it's the land of opportunity. And I think if nothing else, we've seen that over these last 10 months, that how many entrepreneurs have been born in this particular time? And I think if we're ready to shift, like the industrial age used to be what it was. That's not it anymore.
Right.
So now if we can shift to this new world, a new way of doing things, it's a great place to be.
Right.
I used to love going to Jamaica for vacation. So I've seen what it's like to have it bad in my eyes. It may not be bad to them because this is just the way they live.
Right.
Minimal, right? But when you come back here, it's like, you know, if you're not willing to put in some work, if you're not willing to hustle, if you're not willing to grind, there's no reason to not have a skill set, because you know, of course you can go to college and pay for that great education, but you can also go to multiple resources and become educated and get a skill set.
Right. Yeah.
And do whatever you want to do.
That's right.
So there's really no reason to say, well, I don't know how to do this. Well,
Right.
I mean, YouTube is taken. Man, how do you do this? Google it. Go to YouTube.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
I mean, you can watch somebody literally do it.
Absolutely. And you can now gain that skill set. And the same goes with financial literacy now. Like, you don't have to be concerned with those major corporations calling you on the phone.
Yeah.
You can literally go on Zoom 2 days a week, go through these workshops as many times as you want, ask questions, read these books, and then you have access to the resources as well.
And that was my next question. How can folks learn about your service and what you do and get in touch with you?
So I'll put my website on this page, was a link. But I've got, of course, my websites. If you are interested in the convention on January 30th, it's free. Now there is, if you want to attend the workshops, because there's special workshops on Friday, if you want to attend those, it's $10. But if you just want to get an introduction to the campaign and learn about what we do, totally free. And it's just worth your time. That's the only thing you have to do is, will it be worth my time to sit down with the family for a couple hours and take in this information? And again, it should be the family doing it, because now, like, my parents never talked to us about money, right? But because of this education, you know, my wife and I now have these conversations. Now I'm thinking about, okay, how do I introduce this information to my son? My son's 3.5. So how do I now introduce this information to him? So now we're, you know, his grandparents give money on time. So we've got the banks, we've got the big jars.
Right.
We're putting money in it, we're counting it. And so now at what point do we start talking about how does this work? My parents never did that because they never knew themselves, right? And no one ever taught them. But now I can teach my son this information as well, which is pretty awesome.
Tell me about Word for Word.
Word for Word was a show that I did on Access Cable. So again, did it for 7 years, and it was an entertainment, sports show. Interviewed a lot of people. Went to DC for the Million Man March. That was probably one of the, I would say one of the biggest shows I did, because it was one of the things where, like, as an African American man, I didn't want to miss history. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I have to go. Yeah. And being able to document that and talking to people from all over the country about really what the event stood for.
That was 1990.
I want to say 96.
96.
Because it's funny you say that, because I was in a 7-Eleven and hadn't realized that it was the 20th or 25th anniversary of it. And I'm in 7-Eleven, and there in the newspaper, and it was the Beacon News. And they had a photo saying, celebrating the anniversary of the Million Man March. It's like, man, it's been that long. Mm-hmm. But knowing that I was there. One thing that I just can't forget, this isn't word for word, but it's PBS. One of the biggest interviews I've ever done was Candace Parker.
Really?
Yeah. Now this is when she was a freshman in high school, though. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, who knew? So she went to Naperville Central, I believe it was. Central or North? I think it was Central.
Yeah. And
so I'm 6 feet tall. So here I am walking into the gym, and I see this kid walking towards me, but I'm looking up. So she was a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
And just looking back, and like, who would have thought that she would have become this humongous WNBA star, great person, family now. And so I just look back at some of the things that I've done, and I have some good stories to tell. So I think, but I look back and like think about. Sometimes we don't really appreciate the things that happen because we don't understand the relevance of them when they happen. Mm-hmm. But I've had a good track. I've had, even though I had to turn left, I had to turn right, I had to get up.
You gotta do that sometimes.
You have to do that sometimes. And now being in the position that I'm in now, being able to help people create a legacy for themselves and for their family is the ultimate. Because if we don't do it for them or help them do it, who's going to do it?
Right.
You know.
What does 2021 mean for you? What's your what do you have to come?
Well, it would be definitely focusing on this campaign, because back in, so financial education was born in 2015. That's when the Saving Your Future book came out. And so one of our first goals was to educate 1 million families financially by 2020.
Yeah.
So we achieved that in the month of July, and it was like 1.25 million people. So as of October, the new goal now is 30 million people by 2030. So 10-year stretch.
Right.
So through the workshops, clients, people becoming campaigners, that's educating 30 million people.
Man.
And so we track these numbers as well. So full steam ahead with the campaign, right? Building a team of campaigners, so people who want to do what I do, and it doesn't have to be on my level, but if you want to campaign and help spread the word, you can do that and help us do that. If you are looking for another source of income, you can become licensed, we can train you. So we're talking about now going from employee to self-employed. But what if you want to become a business owner? What if you want to become an investor? We can help you do those transitional pieces as well. So the campaign, working on myself, because I'm not where I want to be from a financial standpoint, but I know the information, I have the resources, so it's just building on that with my wife and my son, but also continuing to build my network of people who I associate with from a professional level to help transition from employee to investor as well. And who knows what else, man. I mean, I've become pretty good at pivoting, and I definitely want to continue doing that as well. So it's like, you know, I want to build an empire of myself. So I want to duplicate myself. So it's helping other people do what I do, but then also where they could also benefit from it as well for their family too. So
right.
Yeah.
Widening the sandbox.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Whatever other term one would want to use. That's right. Making the table longer. There's enough for everybody.
There's enough for everybody. And it's funny because I most recently, because of the pandemic, have started watching, because I wanted to learn more about investing. I don't want to just learn from the people who are like me in the campaign.
Right.
So I've started on YouTube, just put it in investing or building wealth. And so now I've even found some other people who are my mentors, even though we don't know each other. They're my mentors because I like their message, but I'm watching videos on investing and building wealth and estate planning and just all this stuff, and I just really want to feed myself.
Right.
Because the more I feed myself, the more I can help feed other people. And so just not being stuck in this bubble of what we do, but trying to grow mentally as well.
All right. The show ends on a positive note.
Yes.
What is your message for the people of Aurora today?
Number one, join the campaign. Because I think, again, we don't know what we don't know. And even though you think you may believe that you're in a good situation, come and get the education and really find out if you're, because if you're in a good spot, if you're in a good place, then at least you can confirm it.
Right.
But the workshops may help you identify some blind spots that you did not know you have. But also, I would say have faith in the downtown area. It's moving, but I would say find a way to give to the downtown area and to the city of Aurora. You know, like what can you give? Because those who give, it will come back tenfold. But always be willing to give. I mean, I sit down with people all the time and educate them, and they don't take action with, and that's fine. I can't make you do that, but I know that the information I gave you, you leave off better than when you came and sat down with me.
Right.
So just being able to give is what I would say. So whatever your skill set is, give it to people.
Whatever your skill set is, give it to people.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time.
No
we
problem.
appreciate you coming onto the show. We
Absolutely.
appreciate getting to know you and speaking to you.
Absolutely.
And we'll make sure that your information, links, and information to your page, and then the January 30th
Convention.
The convention.
Yeah,
Right.
so I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are the ones that I use the most.
All right.
But
Oh yeah, shout out to the Instagram.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure being on the show.
Yep. So for all of you listeners, all you viewers, we appreciate Mr. Rayford. And the second largest city's first daily news podcast is starting off 2021 very strong with interviews like this and great information. Stay blessed, and we will see you guys tomorrow for another great episode. Peace.
Pleasure talking to you, man.
Yeah, same here.